All right, greetings and welcome to another episode of the Unnamed Bracketology podcast. My name is Kerry Miller, joined as always by my good friend Graham Dorn. Graham, we've had some excellent guests this season, but today, just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Just the two of us, Graham and I. It's Big Ten Tuesday. Who in this league do you most want to talk about? And we will start there. I'm letting you drive the ship today.
I think Ohio State is the most interesting team to talk about right now because we've talked about them all season long. Kerry, you identified it, I don't know, early January that Ohio State was going to be the team we talked about from the Big Ten all year long, and they have been. And what they did this time compared to every other time we've ever talked is they got a big win. And
Yep.
Ohio State, I think, is now firmly in the field. Doesn't mean they can't drop out, but for today, I don't really see how you could not have Ohio State in the bracket.
Yeah, let's start with the Buckeyes as I throw up the spreadsheet. Not throw up, but might throw up when we get to Indiana or USC if we venture that far south. But Ohio State, you have them at 40, so that is your last 10 seed. I have them at 41. That is my top 11 seed. Either way, they are narrowly clear of Dayton at the moment. As you said, they're not locked. I think if they lose either of these last two games, they could definitely drop out. And we just saw with Iowa what can happen when you walk into state college and you're not prepared to win that game. But yeah, Buckeyes have gotten very interesting. All season long they were, where's your great win? Nice metrics. Where's the win? And until Northwestern upset Indiana, they had no quad one wins. Then they accidentally fell into one from like a month and a half ago. But now they have at least a marquee win at home against Purdue, which, as you see here, Indiana also has, UCLA also has. We've talked a lot about how Purdue has not held serve at home against, the likes of Michigan, Michigan State, Illinois, but they also haven't won on the road against the bubble teams. Like, where are Purdue's wins coming from? I don't get it, how they're still a 3 seed, because I feel like every team in this league has a quality win over Purdue, but now that is enough for the Buckeyes. Let's say they beat Penn State but lose to Indiana. And let's say Indiana wins out. So they beat Minnesota, whatever that is, tonight or tomorrow. Then they get that win over Ohio State. I think we could end up with, heading into the Big Ten tournament, Indiana's the last team in and Ohio State's the first team out. Like, it's that close. But I think if Ohio State wins out, they probably become a lock. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think we could potentially be looking at two teams from the Big Ten both going to Dayton. I could easily see Ohio State and Indiana both headed to Dayton in that scenario. Both probably need to win their first Big Ten game for that to happen, but not an unrealistic scenario. So, Indiana, as much as I want to say they're completely out of this thing at a minus 0.11 WOB, they're still in it and they've got an opportunity. We've talked about this before. If you're out of the bracket, you just want a chance to work your way back in. And that's what Indiana has. And in my opinion, they have the best kind of opportunity. They have one that's a quad 1A win if they get it, but a really reasonable quad 1A win to get. At Ohio State is not going to Michigan. It's not going to Michigan State. It's one that you can reasonably get. So really great opportunity for Indiana to completely change the profile.
Yeah, I agree. Their resume metrics kind of suck. They're slightly negative WOB. Even though it is a quad 1A opportunity, I don't know how much that's going to do for their WOB at Ohio State. That's probably like a point 0.6, maybe. Although I guess Duke got like 0.7 for winning at NC State, so maybe it is a little better than I'm giving it credit for. But yeah, that'd be a quality win. I don't think the win over Minnesota doesn't. I don't even think that would be a quad two. Where I'm not sure where Minnesota's at. They're somewhere around 75. So they could end up at 5-12 against quads 1 and 2. And last year they were 4-13 against quad 1, and they got left out. I think they could end up with like the exact same WOB as they had a year ago, at least heading into the Big Ten tournament. We'll see what they're able to do from there, but that is definitely a team that I think even if they win out, they definitely still have work to do in Chicago next week to, I mean, if only to avoid bid thieves, if nothing else.
Well, another
Um,
thing that
yeah,
Indiana really has as an issue, and we're learning that every year these, rules get broken every year, but nobody's gotten a bid at more than games under 500 against quads 1 and 2. Indiana is not going to reach that mark, absent a crazy run in the Big Ten tournament. But the opposite side of that is we're in a whole new era of NIL. We know what's going on. All the top teams are getting better and better and better, and all the teams beneath them are getting worse and worse and worse because they're losing their best talent to the top teams, and it just keeps happening over and over again. So we're going to start to see these kind of profiles more often where teams are just losing to the top teams a lot, and that doesn't mean they're out of consideration.
wasn't expecting to have an NIL conversation, nor an NLI conversation. Name, image, and likeness, whatever. What was NLI? You sign
National letter
your,
of intent.
yeah, national letter of 10. Uh, the good old days when recruiting and stuff mattered more than the portal. Do you want to talk USC at all? I think they're dead.
I mean, if they
Nope,
win
skip
their
them.
next two, we can talk about them.
I mean, even that's not going to do much. I mean, the win at Washington looks nice because they're like 54th or something in the net, but I don't think it'll be enough to get them back and all the injuries they've had. I think they're dead. Let's go to Iowa. I think they're every time I look at Iowa, I'm less convinced that I should have them as a 9 seed. Like, and in a way that I think maybe they should be a 10 seed, not an 8 seed. Um, they have those terrible losses at Maryland, at Penn State. Losing at Minnesota isn't that bad, but it's not great. I know a lot of Big Ten teams have suffered that loss at the barn, but man, all they've done is gotten that home win over Nebraska on a night when just Nebraska shot like 5 for 26 or something. It was a 57-52 game. Like that barely counted as a win as far as Seth Davis is concerned because you got to get to 50, right, for Seth. But if they lose these next two, I think they're probably sitting at around like 40th on the seed list heading into the Big Ten tournament. Like I think they'd still be in. I think they would be the 9 seed, so they would probably be facing someone like Maryland in their first game, and then they would get. I think UCLA is tracking towards the 8 seed, and that feels like this year's classic. Winners in, losers sweating bullets type of game. If that's what we end up with as the 8-9 Big Ten game, what do you forecast for Iowa, assuming losses here to Michigan and Nebraska? Otherwise, we're not even having a conversation. They'll be a lock.
I think they're probably in the field, but it may come down to what happens in the Big Ten tournament. If they do make the field in that scenario, I could easily see them going to Dayton. Uh, I really like Iowa as a team compared to the teams we're looking at in the bubble right now. But if they add those two losses, it's kind of the same thing we mentioned with Indiana and Ohio State. Like at some point, you have so many opportunities, you're expected to win some, and they really haven't done that a whole lot. So, not an easy path. And why I think Indiana, actually, some Iowa fans had asked me this. They're like, "Well, you're saying if why aren't they on win one in and lock on your chart?" And I'm like, "Well, they are if they win." But they go to Nebraska and host Michigan. So I don't want it to look confusing. Like I think Iowa's in the clear. I have them way down the graphic because I think they're in real trouble if they lose those. It's going to be a really close call depending on what happens at the Big Ten tournament. And the other thing that we haven't really talked about so much yet this year, we're likely to probably see somebody besides Utah State win the Mountain West Conference tournament. We're probably going to see somebody besides St. Louis win the A10 tournament. Good chance Miami, Ohio wins their next two but doesn't win the MAC tournament. If all of these things happen, all of a sudden where we think that bubble line is, it just starts getting smaller and smaller. And then all of a sudden you do the West Virginia thing where even if we project that they're in the tournament, we could still be wrong. If we're wrong by a few spots, that's the difference between going to Dayton or just being out of the tournament. Like you could just be out of the tournament and we're wrong on that. So I think Iowa is in serious danger if they can't win one of these two.
Uh, as an aside, do you think any of the five power conferences will produce a bid thief because I do not. I can't see like a Georgetown, and the Big East is the only one that like mathematically the Big East makes the most sense. We're guaranteed to have a potential bid thief in the semifinals just since it's a 3-bid league, but I don't I don't think it's going to happen. But I agree with you on between the Mountain West A10, maybe even the West Coast Conference, if Santa Clara wins, that'll, even though we have them narrowly in, that's kind of a bid thief scenario where, a bubble team becomes a lock. It's not really necessarily stealing a bid from the bubble, but between those and then the A10, what's the other one? Mountain West. What
And
other
I
one
think
did
the
you say?
MAC could lose one
The
too.
MAC. Yeah, the MAC. Yeah. Yeah. Akron could definitely win that thing. All right, let's get away from the bubble because it's gross. Let's talk Nebraska for a little bit because you and I do not see eye to eye on Nebraska. They were 11th in the top 16 reveal. And we try not to put too much emphasis on what the reveal was, but that was, a week and a half ago. I think it's still relevant. They haven't lost since then. They haven't played anyone since then, but they haven't lost since then. They won all 3 games convincingly. They were one spot behind Kansas, and now you have them a full seed line behind Kansas. Graham, please explain why you hate Nebraska ball so much.
I have them as a 12. They're still on my 3 line. That's not a full seed line.
I thought you had Kansas at 8.
Oh no, I had
Oh,
them
no,
at
no, you
8.
have Illinois at 8.
Lost
You have
to
Kansas at
Arizona.
9.
Well, no, I moved them back to 10. But either way, bottom line, I think a lot of that stuff's going to get resolved tonight, and I think it's going to be one way or the other, right? Like if Kansas loses to Arizona State, I think they're going to be a 4 seed. If Nebraska loses to UCLA, I think there's a really good chance Nebraska's a 4 seed. I think the same thing could happen with Alabama if they go win at Georgia. That changes the calculus. Like some really important games tonight. But to Nebraska and why I have them on 12, I'll be honest, I'm closer to having them 13th than I am 11th. And it's not because I don't really respect what Nebraska has done this year. I just really look at that top of that profile. And it's the drop off that does it for me. At Illinois is a fantastic win. Michigan State at home is a very good win. Then you go at Ohio State, bubble team, at Indiana, bubble team, New Mexico, neutral court, bubble team. They have 2 wins over what we think is the for sure projected field. And we're talking about them being a lock for like a 3 seed. I don't know about that. I know that they played a weaker non conference schedule, but typically that's not a break from the committee for not having more chances. Why didn't you go schedule harder? You should have made sure that you had got all the big wins that you needed to get. So I look at Nebraska and I just get hung up really on 2 particular games. After January 2nd, they got Purdue at home and they got Illinois at home. If they get either of those 2, I think it's no doubt that they're at least a 3 seed, but probably a 2 seed at that point. But they didn't. All the pressure was on, and they didn't get either of them. And the reason why I think that is so big is because they only have 2 wins against the net top 30. You compare that to the other teams in this area. Let's look at Purdue. They lost at home to Purdue. So if you're going head-to-head tiebreaker, that one was in Lincoln. But they also won at Alabama. They beat Texas Tech by 30 on the neutral court, won at Iowa, won at Wisconsin. I view Purdue as in front of Nebraska. And why I think that's so problematic for Nebraska is I think Purdue is fading. And Purdue has had 4 opportunities to beat top 10 teams, all on their home court in West Lafayette, and they've lost all 4 of them. I think if you are like me and you're looking at Purdue and thinking, I have serious concerns about Purdue's resume, Nebraska is getting dragged down with that. So can I see the argument for Nebraska as high as even like number 7 or 8 overall? Yeah, I can see that argument, and I wouldn't really fight against it. I just happen to think that Nebraska and Purdue are a bit tight at the hip, and the more Purdue struggles, the worse Nebraska looks in comparison.
I am glad you at least said that you could see the argument for Nebraska at 7 or an 8 because when I compare, I'm with you. Like it feels like they should be behind Purdue, aside from just the sheer volume of losses that Purdue has taken. I think that's a pretty significant difference, 7 losses versus 4 losses. But if I compare Nebraska and Michigan State side by side, it's so close. Like I mean, even down to the right, a really good road win at Purdue, at Illinois, really good home win, Illinois, Michigan State. I think a neutral against North Carolina is only marginally more impressive than a road game against Ohio State. They both have at Indiana there. I would take that Arkansas home game over the neutral against New Mexico, but would also take all of Nebraska's losses ahead of Michigan State's. Like, I think it's close, and I I think there's just an element of it that like you can't help it, but in the back of your head you're just like, it's Nebraska. Like they need to prove they belong more so than Michigan State does, and I hate that that's a thing, but we see it the other way too, where it's like you want to believe in a team. Like as soon as a Kansas or a Kentucky or North Carolina starts to go on a run, it's like, okay, here they come. And with Nebraska, with Vanderbilt, like we need to see more of it. I think whether you admit it or not, I think there is that element of it that it's holding me back with Nebraska too. Like if they hadn't been 11 in the reveal, I'd probably agree with you that they're right on that mix for a 4 seed right now. But I think if you just look at the resume and strip away the name, as the committee theoretically does, and look at the nothing close to a bad loss, 8-4 against Quad One. I mean, it's right there with Michigan State. So I have them at 10 overall. I was tempted, honestly, to swap them with Illinois at 8 overall because of that road win. No, I know it was a road win exchange program, but that's a huge result that I think really solidified Nebraska. But we'll see. Like you said, it's going to sort itself out to some extent. If they beat both UCLA and Iowa, I think maybe then they really get into that mix for 7 or 8 overall. But I can see them on the 3 line, towards the back of the 3 line, even for now. Anybody else top 4 seeds here that you want to talk about? Michigan, Michigan State, Illinois, Purdue. I mean, Michigan's boring at this point.
Well, I mean, we just talked about Purdue a little bit. I just really think they are kind of self-selecting where they're at seed-wise, and I hope the committee does it this way because I genuinely believe it's the most fair. They won at Nebraska, they won at Alabama, they beat Texas Tech by 30. So that seems to be like some sort of line on this side. They had 4 home games against top 10 teams. They lost all 4. That seems to be the other line. Like this is just telling us like put these guys just outside the top 10 and just call it quits with Purdue. That seems to be the right spot with them.
Fair enough. I can't disagree with you. I mean, Purdue is probably the one team in this like 7 to 15 range that I'm struggling with the most. I mean, before that loss to Ohio State, I if they had won that game, I probably have them maybe even ahead of Houston at 6 overall. And now I want them as a 4 seed instead because I feel like I've just seen enough of Purdue blowing what they should be. Um, Illinois is tough though. When Iowa State lost last night, I previously had the Cyclones at 7 overall, and then even though losing at Arizona, that's not a bad resume loss. I don't. Did you actually look like how much did that affect their WOB overnight? Because I know you were curious to see what that would do.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a big wob effect in total points, and it also really didn't affect their ranking much because they
Yeah,
managed to barely stay above Virginia. That'll be interesting, though. Virginia, even beating Wake Forest, will probably push Iowa State further down. And so I do think Iowa State's getting really interesting as a 4 seed. I also think, to your point, Purdue is getting a little interesting as a 4 seed. But
yeah,
the thing I really struggle with is I have Illinois 8th overall. And then I look at their resume and I think it's very similar to what I see in Iowa State. And so I'm like really struggling on why am I thinking about Iowa State for a 4 seed and I'm over here Illinois as a 2 seed. I think it really just speaks to how truly tightly bunched 7 to 14 on the seed list are. I mean, if you took my seed list and you just reversed it the opposite way, I don't think it seems
I
unreasonable. Like I could make an argument for it truly to be completely reversed.
mean, that's what I tell myself I'm supposed to do every year with my 8 and 9 seeds is just flip them on Selection Sunday, and then I'd be more accurate. Like I find it hard to believe I would be wanting to do that for 7 through 14, but your point stands because I feel like no matter who I have at 7 and 8, I hate it because I think they're too high. And whoever I have at 13 and 14, I hate it because I think they're too low. Like we have 8 3 seeds right now. We can't put them all on the 3 line. It's frustrating. Yeah, I think we're good for the day. You got anything else to add? Oh, I haven't checked the chat at all.
I would
I'm
just say,
negligent here.
to your point the other day, Michigan State not completely dead for a 1 seed. I think if they were to go to Michigan, win that game, win the Big Ten tournament title, maybe we got something there. Especially if we're talking about Florida could make up ground on the top. Florida doesn't get to go to Michigan and win that game. We know for a fact, whatever Florida does, they will not have a win against the number 1 seed. Michigan State could potentially have 2 wins against the number 1 seed by the time we get to Selection Sunday. So wouldn't count out the Spartans as a 1 seed contender.
Texas Tech potentially could have like 3 wins against 1 seed at Selection Sunday. Playing Devil's Advocate pod pointed this out. Think I saw Lunardi still having Indiana in. Yeah, he is Indiana's his last team in. That's hard for me to believe. I think he's just lower on VCU. I think that's the team he has out that we have in, and was just like, I got to put in somebody who's actually beaten somebody, and I think he probably landed on Indiana there. But yeah, I was surprised he still has the Hoosiers in after they lost to Michigan State.
I mean, if you wanted to make a metric argument for Indiana, I could possibly see it. But wow, you just look at that record against quads 1 and quads 2, and I just don't know how the committee rewards that. Like the big thing they did for UNC last year is they said, hey, look how great they were against quad 2. You know how hard it is to play that well against quad 2. Indiana hasn't done anything besides that, right? Like they have their 2 big wins, and then you look over in quad 2, it's like they weren't even playing quad 2, let alone beating those teams. They just like never really played those games. So you just have so many of those 17 wins for Indiana are just against teams that don't really provide any value at all. So I can't really see any argument for Indiana in today. If they win the next 2, I can see the argument for putting them in.
I do think what is like Indiana's at that, what are they, negative 0.11 wob, which for, up until a week ago, that was a straight up out. One, it looked like it was going to have to be one overall to get in. And now we've got, looking at it today, TCU is at a 0.92, SMU is at a 0.74, A&M is at a 0.72, New Mexico 0.42. Like negative 0.11 is not 0.11. I said that right. Yeah. It's not as bad as it looked a week ago. I think they still have a chance, just like I think that's exactly what Xavier was when they got in last season. But I mean, they're behind USC in WOB. That's pretty gross. They're behind Auburn, 14 loss Auburn in WOB. That's pretty gross. So I do think it's getting tough to find, enough teams that do have a WOB north of, zero point 0.5 anymore. David Nagel, 1999, says Iowa's non-conference strength of schedule is really bad, if I remember correctly. I can look at it right here. Where is that? Big Ten. I always have to filter so that I can still be able to see the top. Net non-conference strength of schedule, Nebraska's 313, Iowa's 259. So not good. Indiana's 225 for whatever that's worth. If that's a bubble conversation that we're having. All right, I think we're good. That's it for the chat. You all set? Let's get ready for some good games tonight. All right. All right. Thanks for watching again. At some point, we'll have another guest on with us. People are just lining up to hang out with us and listen to our nonsense. But until next time, take care and enjoy the hoops.